Hello, and thank you for joining us on Thursday's edition of Journalists Hangout. I am Esther Mopariola. Today on the program, former President Olusegun Obasanjo says security threats can't consume Nigeria as police deploy personnel in FCT borders to forestall incursion by bandits. INEC proposes February 8th for 2023 presidential election, warns of consequences of delaying Electoral Act amendment by National Assembly. And later on the show, Manchester City grab pole position for Champions League final after beating PSG 2-1 in Paris. I will be hanging out with Babajide Kolade Otitoju and Olabisi Deji Folutile. Journalist Hangout starts now. A message of hope in troublous times is how best to describe former President Olusegun Obasanjo's comment on insecurity in Nigeria. While making remarks at the 108th annual convention of the Nigerian Baptist Convention along Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, Obasanjo said, though insecurity in Nigeria is a big threat, the country won't be consumed by the situation. Meanwhile, the Federal Capital Territory FCT Police Command has ordered deployment of personnel to the borders with neighboring states. Well, this is to forestall incursion of bandits into Abuja following fears of an alleged impending invasion by terrorists and armed bandits. But let's hear the Obasanjo story with you.
Insecurity is one of the major challenges confronting Nigeria, and for the country to overcome the problem, citizens must work together with the government, shun acts of violence, and promote peace at all times. While speaking about the roles of citizens to a country during trying period, the governor of Ogun State, Dapo Abiodun, and his Oyo State counterpart, Seyi Makinde, called for support of the people for the government. They noted that violence, call for cessation, and civil war can only leave people with pains, scars, and hardship, but peace and unity facilitate development.
The prevailing situation in our country has made it mandatory for the state and other institutions responsible for mass mobilization and socialization of the church to continue to work hand in hand so as to present a united front defeating the sundry challenges currently confronting our country, particularly insecurity.
It's a very big challenge. We need prayer. We need you to continue to pray for the leaders in this country and to continue to do your bit, because the government alone cannot do it.
On his part, the former president of Nigeria, Olusegun Obasanjo, says he is in support of their positions, noting that he is an incurable optimist about the Nigerian project.
The good thing and bad thing about success is that when you have it, to keep it, you have to work harder. Otherwise, you start to slip back. So you are now challenged, all of you. You work harder than before, particularly in the type of situation we are in now.
They also commended the outgoing president of the Baptist Convention in Nigeria for the successful completion of his 10-year tenure as the leader of the church. Kazim Olowe, TVC News, Abeokuta.
Well, let's have more discussions on this topic as I have with me in the studio Babajide Kolade Otitoju and Olabisi Deji Folutile. So let's begin with you now, Babajide. Indeed, these are troublous times for the country, and the remarks of the former president can be reassuring that security threats can't consume Nigeria. Do you buy into his sentiments?
I hope that, as he said, we will not be laid back. We will continue to give our best. I'm not going to sit here and say security threats cannot consume Nigeria. If we permit security threats to consume us as a nation, it will consume us. We've seen nations that are no more. If they told me that the whole Yugoslavia would break up, I wouldn't have believed. If they told me that Soviet Union, the old Soviet Union, would break up into so many countries, I wouldn't have believed. So I remain confident that it has pleased God to bring us together as a nation. But the biggest threat we face, the biggest problem facing our country now is insecurity. And there are elements who have taken it upon themselves to make life difficult for the rest of us. Government has to rise to its responsibility of securing us as a people. The armed forces have to rise to the challenge of defeating any threat to the oneness of our country, any threat to security in our country. It's reassuring that someone of the stature of President Olusegun Obasanjo has given us some form of assurance that what we are going through would not consume our nation. But that doesn't mean that we should fold our arms behind our backs and watch things continue to degenerate. We are being buffeted by all kinds of security challenges. A lot of them you can't even talk about on air for obvious reasons. So the challenge that we have is to play our part. You can see that the governor of Oyo State also spoke on the need for individuals to play their part. Pray for the people in government. I still believe in prayers. Pray for the people in government that God will give them the wisdom to steer the ship of the Nigerian state in the right way. But the success of our country is dependent on what we make of it. We can make or mar our country by what we do. But as Nigerians, we must commit to keeping Nigeria one. And the people in government, having realized now that insecurity is the biggest problem that we face, must commit to protecting us a lot more than they are doing currently. That way, the oneness of our country, the indivisible wish of every Nigerian, the wish of every Nigerian to have Nigeria remain one indivisible entity will come to pass. But we have to work hard to keep our country one. We have to work hard to secure our country. We have to do better than we are doing currently.
Right. Now, Olabisi, with this incessant calls for secession, we've had the agitators of Biafra. We are also having, people not satisfied with the way things are managed in the country. They more or less seem to be marginalized. What are your thoughts on how best to secure this country or to keep this country indivisible while we have these concerns still on the front burner, while we're dealing with insecurity challenges?
First, let me state that the comments of the former president that Nigeria, this present situation is not going to destroy Nigeria. Let me first of all say that we have to make a clear difference between the entity called Nigeria and the people. You see, Nigeria is not just about the state, it's about the people, the inhabitants. While I agree that the current situation is not likely to destroy us as a nation, but what about the people? And that brings me to your question about agitations of people from different parts of the country. It shows that people are dissatisfied. And you cannot be talking about the entity as a state without looking at the people that constitute that entity. Because Nigeria is not just a name, it is about the people. So what can we do about different agitations? I think it is time for us to visit the different complaints of the people. I think it is time for us to get together and talk about our differences, talk about our problems, get people to talk about what they feel about this country. Because if you are in a country, you should, Nigeria is a beautiful country with over 300 ethnic groups. There is beauty in our diversity, but at the same time, this is a beauty that needs to be managed for us to be able to get to maximize all the benefits of our unity as a country. So I think going forward, it is high time our government started to think about getting people together. And this is not just a JoJo situation. It's getting people together with the aim and the seriousness of actually finding solutions to people's agitations. We don't have to be divided before we can live together as a people. And this is very important because we can say that Nigeria will survive. But what about the economic implications of what is going on now? Whether we like it or not, everyone has to focus on insecurity. Because without security, we can't even be talking about people. Mm-hmm. Now we are putting all our resources into securing ourselves. What happens to other areas of our economy? How do you even encourage inflow of resources for development from other parts of the country? How do you even encourage other people to come to Nigeria to invest when we have insecurity? And we don't need to belabor the point. Nigerians are afraid. So we just need to do something now to bring people together and let us solve our problems. They are not insurmountable problems. We just need the seriousness to approach the issues. Then I think we'll be fine.
Now, Babajide, in the course of these conversations, there has been suggestions, perhaps from politicians and from well-known individuals, that we need external help. And I'm sure you've mentioned this several times on this platform, that the president or our country is not too small to ask for external help when the need arises, especially as we are right now. So what makes it difficult for us to, look in that direction, knowing the situation we have on ground, which is quite distasteful and it's not so pleasing before in the international community?
Yes, we certainly need help. And our friends in the West, especially the Americans, can offer us a lot of support. They can help with the training of our troops. They can help with selling weapons to us, game-changing weapons. Weapons that will give us a massive edge over the enemy. Before the 2015 election, we were able to bring in the T-72 Russian main battle tanks. And those tanks helped us tremendously. The Nigerian war hero, Lieutenant Colonel Abu Ali, that was the tank that he was riding as a tank commander. And we were able to take back all of the communities that Boko Haram controlled in Borno State, in Adamawa, and in Yobe. They had 2 local governments they were controlling in Yobe. They had 7 local governments in Adamawa and about 17 in Borno State. But we took back all of these communities and we were able to have elections. We also brought people that the world now describes as private military contractors. The world no longer calls them mercenaries. They call them private military contractors, PMC. We brought them, and they came with their equipment. They were able to help us to chase away Boko Haram and keep those communities safe. In fact, a lot of those communities, they've not been able to reclaim them since we claimed them back then. Places like Goza, Mafa, and the rest of them were recaptured during the Jonathan regime, just before the election. The record is there. If you Google it, you just ask, when did Nigerian Army recapture Goza? You see the date. When did Nigerian Army recapture Damboa? You see the date. It was before the election. Thanks to the work of these private military companies. And then, of course, in Borno North, we had the Chadian troops also helped us to capture some of the territories. Facts don't lie. If anyone will check, they will see that that was the time that we captured those local governments. They were not captured after President Buhari came to office, or as some people would want us to believe. The facts are there. So we still need to, we can bring in such private military contractors. Even the governor of Borno State has publicly asked for them because of the good work they did at that time. They also helped us to train some of our troops, even our aviation people, our aviators. So there's no big deal about that. What we do not want to see is a situation in which American troops, for example, will come to our soil. No, nobody wants to see that happen. But we have to be able to protect our people, and if we need help, then let that help come.
All right, I understand we have our first caller, Adeniji from Ikoton. Please go ahead with your contribution.
Good evening. Caller, good evening, my brother.
Good evening, sir.
Thank you for your analysis all the time. But my point is this. I wonder why the leaders of Nigeria refuse to take action. It gives us an impression as if they are privy to the behavior of the bandits. Let them do something. Otherwise, they are privy, they know something. If you don't have anything to hide, let them do something. Fight these bandits. Yes. Nigeria is capable of fighting them, as we always tell us. We expect.
All right, thank you very much for your contributions there. Apologies for the network. Well, thank you very much. But still on this issue of insecurity, Babajide, you know, the FCT, we understand, has ordered the deployment of personnel to the borders with neighboring states, particularly, Niger, you know, because we know of what has happened in Niger, where Boko Haram has hoisted its flag in Shiroro and other local government areas in the state. So even though this might be worrying, is this enough to ward off an impending attack in the Federal Capital Territory?
What I would expect them to do is not simply to be reactive. We've got to be proactive. As things stand, bandits are terrorizing communities around the Federal Capital Territory. Communities like Buhari, even Gwagwalada, Tungamaje, you know, all of those communities along the road that leads to Kaduna, for example, those communities are not safe. So bandits are operating in those places. Remember the orphanage that was ransacked by bandits and they kidnapped the people there. So we've got to be ready to deal with this kind of threats. Not to wait until a governor announces that Boko Haram has hoisted his flag in Shiroro local government, 2 hours drive from Abuja, before we start taking steps to protect the seat of power. We've got to be proactive and not reactive. I see what they are doing now as being reactive. We have to be ready at all times, because nobody knows when bandits can decide that, okay, we want to enter Abuja, but they have to, the security forces have to be ready at all times.
Labisi, final thoughts on this submission?
Yeah, I agree with Babajide. And also now, we can never even say that the bandits are not in the Federal Capital Territory. No one can say that for sure. The fact that they've not been able to capture any parts of the Federal Capital Territory formally does not mean that they are not there. So our security forces need to do more than what they are doing now. And if they actually need help now, there is no doubt about that. And I think, of course, the president announced, I think yesterday or 2 days ago, that he told the American president that they will need, Nigeria will need help to fight insurgency or insecurity. I also want to believe that a formal application has been made in that regard, and not just a public pronouncement as we heard. Definitely everything that needs to be done should be done to secure the country, because the survivor of the people is the survivor of the nation. Yes, and now let's leave it at that discussions. Well, still ahead on the program, it appears the Independent National Electoral Commission has kicked off the race to the 2023 general elections by announcing February 18th for the conduct of the presidential poll. INEC Chairman Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, who announced the date at the public hearing on Electoral Offences Commission bill in Abuja, said details like primaries, National Assembly and governorship polls will be released after the Anambra governorship poll on the 6th of November. He warned that delay of the Electoral Act amendment by the National Assembly will have great consequences for the country. So, Babajide, with this move now that we have already from INEC, how confident are you that the elections will be smooth sailing and there won't be any glitch whatsoever?
You can have 10 years to prepare in Nigeria and still screw up the election. You can have 20 years to prepare for an election in Nigeria, but are we sure that the politicians will not behave irresponsibly by rigging election? Are we even sure that INEC itself won't have some of its staff conniving with politicians to rig the election? So INEC has always come up with a date for general election early, but on election day, we still experience late arrival of ballot materials. We still experience all kinds of hiccups that will sometimes force us to continue the election the next day. Sometimes even the card reader not working. So all these are that they've started early. It's no guarantee that the election itself will be without glitches. Each and every one of us partaking in the election must play our part as good citizens. Then INEC must also ensure that it's only the right people that they use for their elections. You saw what happened in Akwa Ibom, where a whole professor was taken to court for rigging election, and he was jailed. I hope that we can see more of that. I hope that more examples can be made out of people who compromise standards that INEC has set for itself. There are bad eggs in INEC in form of returning officers, in form of even INEC recs, Resident Electoral Commissioners. So INEC should look within. A situation in which INEC set rules to govern elections and his own staff compromise those rules. His own staff ensure that those rules are not obeyed. A situation in which INEC sets rules for elections and declares that where the card reader is not used, the election over there should be cancelled. And we see some recs, some returning officers returning results from places where their card reader was not used at all, especially during the last off-season elections that we had in 2020. You can't have such a situation and be happy. The INEC chairman has to look within. He knows that amongst his own recs, amongst even his senior staff, there are bad eggs who are refusing to implement the INEC directive as they concern the elections completely. So this kind of people need to be fished out and shown the door. You don't need people who will not implement your own directives that are meant to govern the election. If the electoral law is going to be compromised, it shouldn't be INEC staff. And as I said before, even the idea of using professors, all these professors, academics, we have seen now with one of them jailed in Akwa Ibom, that they are not even better than some of the other people. That you can actually use even full-time INEC staff to do some of these jobs that we bring professors to come and do. And at the end of the day, they connive with wayward politicians to rig our elections. I want to see the next election manifest a significant improvement in the previous elections. For example, in terms of the use of the card reader, in 2015 we achieved 54%. By 2019, it came down to 19%. By the time we had the off-season elections of 2020, we only achieved 16% use of the card reader. It means that the card reader as a means of authenticating the veracity of a voter is being brushed aside because some people simply want to rig elections. That's what is happening. Those who have mobbed up people's voters' cards, any election year, you know it happens, they will mop up voters' cards. But they can't use it if you stick to the card reader. Because the card reader is the electronic verification tool. They can't use those cards that they have mobbed up if you use the card reader. But if the politicians, if INEC staff listen to politicians and they brush the card reader aside, then they will be able to use those cards that they have mobbed up. They will bring their people, simply share to them, including people who did not register for the election. So sometimes I ask myself, when are we going to have a truly free and fair election in our country? Because what we are doing now is simply belittling our country. If at our age as a country we cannot have free and fair election, except to rigging election like people who don't know what they are doing.
Well, we have more discussions on this conversation. We have to go on a short break. We'll be back with more. Stay with us. Welcome back. You're still on to Journalists Hangout, and we're still discussing the issues pertaining to INEC's announcement of February 18th for the conduct of the presidential poll. So, Alabisi, you know, there's this bone of contention with regards to the Electoral Act. And INEC says any delay in the Electoral Act amendment by the National Assembly will have serious consequences for the country. Now, what do you make of this, especially as we're yet to have this act, you know, passed before the elections?
Yeah, actually, we have an Electoral Act. What we are talking about is a review of that act to include the use of more technology in the conduct of our elections. Yes, card reader is a major technology, but there are also other things that are being proposed that we validate, that we further validate the
elections,
the credibility of our elections. Part of it is allowing people to actually know how the votes are counting, from maybe allowing INEC, for instance, to use a dedicated server that people can also access as the votes are being counted, so that
it's transparent.
Yes, it's transparent. And we couldn't do that the other time because the president didn't sign the bill for that to come into effect. But you see, it's interesting that even up till now, that has not been done. And there is actually no guarantee that this is going to be done. For example, INEC made its announcement at about exactly 885 days to 2023 presidential election. It even came out to say 1 year, I mean, just to show us that we still have time. But the question is, are our lawmakers interested in actually effecting these changes in the Electoral Act? Because effecting the changes will mean that the chances of rigging our elections will be slim. And you know that in a country where politicians don't actually care about the people, because we cannot really say that our politicians rely on the electorate per se to win their elections. In such a situation, you don't expect these lawmakers to do things that will make the votes of the people to count. So I think the onus is on us as Nigerians to begin to call on our legislatures to actually review this law in existence now. You see, INEC tried to do this thing during the Edo and Odo states election. Part of the innovation was using a dedicated online portal and INEC results viewing, so that Nigerians could view results from polling units in real time on election days, as well as the use of the Z-pad. Okay, now I think we need it. It goes beyond the politicians now. I think Nigerians themselves now, we need to mount up that pressure, because give it to INEC chairman, he has done what he can do, and he has come out to tell us that this is the number of days we have before this election. Lawmakers, whatever you can do, you still have time to do it, and it doesn't really take much time to do this thing if there is a commitment, if they are interested. Of course, the speaker has assured that they will do something, so we need to also wait and see if something will be done. But I also think that Nigerians should also stop just sitting down and be looking. Our sit-down look is just too much. We need to ask for what we want and impress it on our politicians to give us what we want. If we don't, we keep on getting whatever they want to give to us.
Now, Babajide, you know, this will be about the third time the Electoral Act will be presented to the president, and he was yet to assent to it. You know, various reasons were given for it to be, for the passage not to have happened at the time before the 2019 elections. Now, how confident are you that perhaps this will get the final nod?
It's difficult to say I'm confident, because I can't read his mind. I don't know what's going through his mind. I don't know. Because frankly, by now I expect that they will have passed the thing. The last electoral bill was painstakingly put together. National Assembly interfaced with stakeholders, including INEC. INEC made input before the National Assembly came up with an electoral bill. But the president's explanation at that time was that he came too late, too close to
the elections.
The election. Now, we have every reason to bring it before him. The National Assembly have every reason to bring it before him, because I understand they want to make some input, and they have already announced that this time around that they want to make sure that the card reader is made mandatory. You know, so let them get the bill sorted out in good time and give to Mr. President at a time when he cannot say he came too late. So at that time, let us see whether he will not sign it. But it's not a good sign for our country. It sends a clear signal that we still want to continue rigging elections, because as long as the card reader is not backed by law, then definitely people will continue to rig election. You will be hearing of huge millions here and there. What usually happens is vote allocation. Vote allocation still happens in our country. So we need to, as my sister said, there should be a lot of advocacy. What are the NGOs doing? The NGOs should push for electoral reform and for the passage, for the president to give his assent to the electoral bill whenever it's presented to him. So if we simply don't make the move and show clearly that this is what we want, politicians will keep taking us for a ride. I am convinced that, yes, politicians are the people who do not want to see free and fair elections. But in INEC, I insist that in INEC, we have a lot of incorrigible elements who do not want free and fair elections to happen. Because if the law says you must cancel an election where the card reader had not been used, how many of them implemented that INEC directive to the letter? How many of them? How many of them did not return results from polling units where violence happened? I can tell you that in some of those off-season elections that we had in 2020, in some polling stations, elections were characterized by vote rigging and outright violence, and INEC still return results from those places. They know I'm not lying against them. Right. They know. And as long as we have people in INEC, whether they are X or ROs, who will allow such sacrilege to happen, then we are not ready. We can announce 1 million days to election that we want to do election. But if we have bad eggs within the INEC who will not faithfully implement the INEC rule book, then we are going nowhere.
All right, we understand we have a call from Akure Omolade. Please go ahead with your contribution. Omolade, are you there? Oh, apologies, no. I think we held you on for too long, but thank you very much. If you can call back, please go ahead and try your luck next time. So, Babajide has said a lot with what regards to the Electoral Act, the amendment and all of that. But, you know, from your own position, do you think, or what conversations do we need to, you know, gather on this matter so that we can have the Electoral Act passed and the people, you know, the elections are counted? It's not the one that you go in for the elections and you're not sure of what the outcome will be like. But what conversations do you think needs to be driven so that we can have this put behind us?
Yeah, I think the conversation we should be driving now is that even the law that is available should be implemented to the letter. A situation where you have a law that you are not even implementing, like Babajide rightly pointed out, it makes nonsense of even the law that is yet to be passed. Now, if INEC officials go against the written rules, what is being done and what should be done? I also think that we should have specific punishments stated that should be meted out to officials that go against the Electoral Act as it is right now. And I also think that that should also, the extent to which we are able to effect the punishments on those who go against the act should go a long way in defining the sources of the INEC chairman himself in his position as the head of the commission. So I think Nigerians should just drive the conversation that, we have rule of law. It's the implementation that is lacking in our country. We should drive that conversation to implementing the laws that are there and also ensure that the ones that are not there, that we need, particularly the use of technologies in driving electoral transparency, should be encouraged, and we should ensure that that law is passed before the 2023 election.
All right, let's quickly go on another break. Journalists Hangout will be back, and we'll have sports journalist Solomon Ajiziogo to join us here on the platform. Stay with us. You're still on to Journalists Hangout, and we have with me in the studio Solomon Ajiziogo. But let's give you a brief of what we're to talk about today. A first ever UEFA Champions League final is within reach for Manchester City, who could also seal the English Premier League title this weekend. In a game of two halves at the Parc des Princes in Paris, City came from behind to beat PSG 2-1 in the first leg of the second semi-final match of the Champions League. Now the citizens have their destiny in their hands. So we'll begin with you, our sports correspondent, Solomon. How do you see the match between City and PSG match?
It was an even match, basically. It was a matchup of two teams of almost equal strength, basically. But then you would understand that PSG were finalists the last time, and so they probably have a better experience playing in this tournament. And they have probably one of the most creative midfields in the world, where you have a midfield that has Neymar, that has Paredes, that has Verratti, that has Di Maria, and then Idrissa Gueye. That's one of the most creative midfields in the world, and we saw that in the first half of that game. But then the second half was a different kettle of fish for them, because we saw the ingenuity of Pep Guardiola. So it was expected to be that firepower. PSG wants to win it, and then the only real reason why Pep Guardiola is in Manchester City is to win the Champions League.
PKO, what was the difference marker for Man City?
I think Kevin De Bruyne stepped up in the second half, and he continued to dictate the proceedings, and it became a game of two halves. During the first half, at a point, it looked like a mismatch because PSG completely dominated the game, and City were making all kinds of mistakes. But by the time they came back for the second half, the English side took control, and the pressure was huge. In fact, I had expected Phil Foden to open scores earlier. He missed a sitter, but ultimately the pressure played out, although again the goals were direct result of errors. The first goal that you are seeing on your screen shouldn't have beaten the keeper. I guess he was distracted by the fact that John Stones was approached the lob with the intention of nodding it in, and he stood on his line and just watched that ball go in. And then the second goal, the free kick, there was no reason for the two PSG players to turn their back to the free kick. They created that space and Mahrez just simply slotted the ball through the void that they had created in the defensive wall. So I think that the solid Manchester City performance in the second half was the difference maker.
But Solomon, are we going to see an all-City or an all-English final in the Champions League? What are your thoughts?
That's a possibility. That's a possibility. The possibility is right now very high when you consider that the first leg Chelsea played was at the Santiago Bernabeu, and they have a very precious away goal. 1-1 it ended with Real Madrid, so they have a +1 to their advantage. If the second leg ends goalless, then Chelsea will advance to the final. But then Real Madrid is a very experienced side in this championship. They are the record holders, title holders here. They rise up on big occasions. So you have a situation where there's still something to play for, but then Chelsea already has 1 foot in, which can be pulled back by Real Madrid if they can beat them in London. For Manchester City, I think that the factor, Jide pointed about De Bruyne. De Bruyne was a fantastic player. But you see, I want to dwell more with the technicalities of what happened yesterday. When I saw what Pep had to do in the second half, it was something, it turned me on, you know. When a coach who decided to play a strikerless formation, a 4-3-3 strikerless formation, and then maintains that formation against all odds, against all intents, and decides that what he wants to do at that point was to stop the transition play from the defense of PSG into the midfield, because that's where the strength is, so that Neymar and the other midfielders can unleash Mbappe. What he just did basically was to switch to, well, something more like a 4-1-5, where 5 attackers were playing the pressing game up front and cutting off the supply from the defense to the midfield. And so the ball didn't get to Neymar, didn't get to any of the midfielders, and so they couldn't launch attack, and they waited for fast breaks and long balls. You know, so I think that Pep has come full cycle. It's now up to Man City. If they lose the second leg, then they have themselves to blame. The semi-final is for them to lose. I think they will make it to the final against PSG. I think they will make it to the final. The odds are right in their favor at this moment. And so the possibility of Chelsea-Man City final, I think we'll see that again. The last time we saw that all-English final, this is the first time in the last 20 years, in the last 15 years, yeah, there was Manchester United and Chelsea, then there was Tottenham and Liverpool, and now we have Man City and Chelsea almost going to make it another possibility. It shows also the strength of the English Premier League, as a club league, and all of that.
Right. Now, Babajide, let's talk about Chelsea and Real Madrid. Has Real Madrid come to the end of the road? What are your thoughts?
You know, football can be very unpredictable. I've seen Porto, coached by Jose Mourinho, play badly in the first leg against Deportivo and went for the second leg and got a result. So it happens. We've seen teams play badly in the first leg and win the second leg convincingly. But against a Chelsea side that has improved defensively under Thomas Tuchel, I don't think that Real Madrid will be able to get past Chelsea. I think that if Chelsea had not been wasteful in the first leg, they could have even won, you know. They were really wasteful. So Chelsea are firm favorites to qualify for the final, and I think that they will be up for it in the second leg. So the possibility of an all-English final is possible. Don't forget, even in the Europa League a couple of years back, we had Chelsea and Arsenal play in the final, you know. So I want to believe that it's possible for Chelsea to edge the 13-time winners of the Champions League out of the race.
All right, and on that note, let's thank you, my guests in the studio, Babajide Kolade Otitoju, and our sports correspondent, Solomon Ajuziogu. And a while ago, we had Olabisi Deji Folutile all on the show. Thank you so much for being a part of it this evening, and to you all who've been a part of it as well. Thank you very much, and that's all on today's edition of the show. Join us again tomorrow for another episode of the program. Don't forget to join us on Journalists Hangout on Sunday from 1:30 to 3:30 p.m. We are on YouTube at youtube.com/TVC News. I'm Esther Mokwariola. Bye for now, and God bless Nigeria.